Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Sweeney, and I'm the IT manager and an analyst with Red Sky Alliance. Today's threat brief contains information gathered from open source and Red Sky collections over the last week. On the agenda for today, we will briefly discuss recent CPU flaws in open source reporting, and then go over 7 days of trending, including the latest APT activities, cloud security, blacklist, and keylogger activity. So researchers at Positive Technologies recently published information regarding a flaw in the Intel CPU chips, specifically in the read-only memory of the Intel Converged Security and Management Engine, or CSME. The Intel CSME is responsible for authenticating Intel-based systems by loading and verifying all other firmware, for modern platforms. In its firmware, Intel CSME implements Enhanced Privacy ID, or EPID. EPID provides numerous security functions to the device, but one of them is allowing the device to be securely identified as part of a group without revealing its specific individual identity within that group. Intel CSME firmware also activates the Trusted Platform module, which allows for the storing of, allows for storing encryption keys without an additional TPM chip, which most computers don't come with. An early stage vulnerability in ROM enables control over reading of the chipset key and generation of all other encryption keys. One of these keys is for the Integrity Control Value Blob, ICVB, easy to say there. With this key, attackers can forge the code of any Intel CSME firmware module in a way that authenticity checks cannot detect. This is functionally equivalent to a breach of the private key for the Intel CSME firmware digital signature, but limited to a specific platform. Now, the chipset key is stored inside the platform in the one-time programmable memory, or OTP memory, and is encrypted. To fully compromise EPID, hackers would need to extract the hardware key used to encrypt the chipset key, which resides in Secure Key Storage, or SKS. PT Security believes if an attacker is able to extract this key, which is used for an entire generation of chipsets, attackers would be able to forge hardware IDs, extract digital content, and decrypt data from encrypted disks. Positive Technologies believes the vulnerability sets the stage for arbitrary code execution with zero-level privileges in Intel CSME. The vulnerability applies to machines with Intel chips built over the last 5 years or so, and Intel claims it was notified of the vulnerabilities and released mitigations in May of 2019. Now, they claim to have released mitigations for all of the vulnerabilities, but PT Security disagrees with them and claims that only some of the vulnerabilities were covered in that. With a need for local or physical access, it's not an easy vulnerability to exploit, but it is a severe one to monitor, especially if your company was affected by the Spectre and Meltdown vulnerabilities of 2017. In gray noise activity this week, a generic web scanner is at the top, along with SSH scanner. This replaces SMB scanner and Mirai in the top 2 spots. Orange SA, previously known as France Telecom SA, is a French telecoms company. Interestingly, the parent company for T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom, is listed in the 2nd spot. T-Mobile recently reported a data breach regarding their customers and employee information. The top port anomaly this week is unregistered TCP port 26398. And interestingly, we see port 1337, known as the leak port, which is commonly used for malware backdoor communications. Next slide. Not to pick on CPUs, but AMD is also experiencing vulnerabilities related to its processors. Researchers from Graz University of Technology recently disclosed a vulnerability in AMD processors all the way from 2011 to 2019, which allows for the leaking of sensitive data from the processors by recovering a secret key used during encryption. It also leverages the L1 data cache way predictor in AMD's Bulldozer microarchitecture. AMD was properly notified in August of 2019, but researchers claim the vulnerability exists today. Microsoft recently released an advisory regarding CVE 2020-0688, which revolves around the Microsoft Exchange email servers. Microsoft claims that knowledge of a validation key allows an authenticated user with a mailbox to pass arbitrary objects to be deserialized by the web application which runs as system. A remote authenticated attacker could exploit the vulnerability to execute arbitrary code with system privileges on a server and take full control of the device. Velexity released a statement claiming it has, quote unquote, observed multiple APTs exploiting or attempting to exploit on-premise Exchange servers. So they're claiming that, you know, this not only does this vulnerability exist, but it seems to be targeted specifically by APTs that they've seen. In some cases, the attackers appear to have been waiting for an opportunity to strike with credentials that had otherwise been of no use. And finally, in open source news, we see that the Department of Justice has arrested the alleged ringleader behind Deer.io, which is a website used to sell breach data stolen by hackers, actually pretty cheap on that website as well. I saw some that were as low as like $20 in Bitcoin, so it was a pretty popular website there. Kirill Viktorovich Fursov, the alleged site master, claims to have hosted over 20,000 online stores. The website was hosted on a Russian-controlled bulletproof web infrastructure. Fursov is charged with abetting and sale of stolen data and will appear in court in New York this week. It's not on this slide, but if you could go back a slide, Red Sky Alliance recently learned of a new wormable Microsoft flaw through SMB version 3. It is something that we're going to be monitoring, so we should have an update on that pretty shortly. Last week, Red Sky Alliance recorded approximately 800,000 indicators as listed above. These collections include our threat recon, keylogger, malicious emails, and sinkhole traffic. The numbers on this slide show the indicators in the respective collections. Indicators are available to Red Sky Alliance members weekly, as well as our blacklists, which come in CSV, FortiSIM, and Proofpoint formats. And these are our APT and botnet indicators collected in the last week. We had 93 unique APT indicators in the past 7 days. This is a significant decrease from last week's reporting, and you can use your two-factor authentication to log into CTAC to download the APT indicators as discussed today. Please contact us via Slack or email if you need any assistance. Like many past weeks, we have SickyPot in the top spot with Mauti in second place. Both tied for third place. Carbonac and Tabsi Teng have fewer indicators listed in our collections this week. Botnet activity over the last 7 days remains unchanged from last week. ChinaNet remains at the top spot with Bharti Airtel and VNPT rounding out the top 3 ASM with botnet activities. On the cloud security front, we are seeing botnet activities in the same cloud environments as last week. Amazon is the highest risk cloud environment this week, with switching with Peak 10 in second place. And Microsoft has moved up past Alibaba this week for the third spot. TierPoint moves back down to the caution risk this week with Rackspace and ONR with Rackspace, and ONR is in the lower risk environment this week. Our blacklists are published weekly. On the right-hand side, you can see some of our keylogger statistics. Last week, Red Sky Alliance observed 114,262 sinkhole connections from new unique IP addresses and 22 unique email accounts compromised with keyloggers. Please go to redskyalliance.org to inquire for additional support, complete blacklists, red X-ray, and API access. Thank you all for joining us again this week. Please visit our Red Sky Alliance reporting portal at redskyalliance.org for additional cyber intelligence. If you have any questions regarding topics briefed today, please get in touch with us at jmckee@wapaclabs.com. I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week.